Good morning. How is everybody today? Okay, I heard some sneezes and I heard some greats. And how is everybody today? All right. I love the wonderful service that both Charlie and Reverend Sue do for us. Their hearts are just so deep, and I love this deep consciousness. And Charlie reminded me that sometimes when we're in deep consciousness, the left brain doesn't completely function as well as it should. I have that happen. I've watched other ministers. Reverend Kathy Ann used to, as the opening, introduce the practitioners who were in service to for the day, and she would turn around and look at them, and she'd go, and her best friend, she would sit there and totally space in the name because she was not in her left brain. So Charlie mentioned that he forgot to mention, first of all, his name. This is Charlie Bourne, as most of you know. Secondly, we're going to have if you're relatively new here and you're thinking of becoming a member of the center, we're going to be having a new member orientation class right after this service in the boardroom, which is through the bookstore and in the offices there. And if you're interested in that, you can ask Michael outside where that is. And for details, it'll take probably half an hour at the most, because I have to be back in the pulpit, and I think Reverend Sue will be doing part of that. So, and what was the third thing? Because I've also forgotten. What was the third thing that we forgot?
We're available for...
Oh yes, they're available as practitioners after the service for prayer support, and I highly invite you and encourage you to use the practitioners for your prayer support. It's sort of like turning on the afterburner in a jet. Okay. They're your afterburners. You kind of get the momentum going, but they're your afterburners. It adds the power, to your process. So I invite you to use them for that purpose. They'll be available either up here or in the back, one of each. So thank you. So last week I took the week off, as you hopefully noticed. That means you were here, and I fell in love with the town of Trinidad. I think I could live there. Yeah, I'm going to talk to the board about getting a corporate airplane so I can move over there and then just fly over here, and every Sunday. And I think I'm sure they'll go for it. But it's a wonderful place. I hung out with Reverend Angelica Jane Taggart, who's the new minister over at the Center for Spiritual Living in Eureka there. And we just had a great weekend exploring redwoods and ocean and food and all that kind of good stuff, and heard her talk that day at last Sunday at the church. So, and I know Reverend Mary did a fabulous talk here about art and how it relates to each of us and who we are and personalities. So great. So today we're going to talk about, is it really true? And I'm really disappointed because yesterday we had a wonderful workshop from Andrew Alser, and halfway through it he says, we're going to talk about what is it really true. So all of you who were at the workshop yesterday, you can just sleep through this talk. It's the same talk. No, it's not. And I wanted to start off with a quote, and the quote comes from the Joyous Living Journal, which is what we're using as our guide through this year for the talk titles, and these are available in the bookstore. And the quote for this topic is, every waking moment, we talk to ourselves about the things we experience. Our self-talk, the thoughts we communicate to ourselves, in turn control the way we feel and act. Our self-talk controls how we feel and act. Now, when you think about that in combination with the reading that we just said, law follows the word, just as word follows the desire, and the word is what manifests. What are the words we're saying to ourselves about ourselves? Or in other words, what are the words we're manifesting? Now, I don't know about you, but once in a while I might have said some things to myself that I would not let my worst enemy say to me. Things like, you dummy, you idiot, when are you ever going to learn? How could you be so stupid? I don't say this particularly, but I know people who say, I always get sick. Flu season comes around. Oh, if anybody's going to get the flu, it's going to be me. If anybody's going to have this experience, it's going to be me. I never win anything. We say stuff like that to ourselves. I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand, but you probably know somebody who talks like that to themselves, right? Not you. I know we're all more enlightened than that here. But maybe back in the old days, and as Michael referred to it as your past life, you might have spoken this way to yourself, and you probably still know a couple people who do. So we're going to talk about that. This is for them, so you can talk to them about that. This is not, because you guys are all above this. So the rule of thumb that one of my teachers gave me a long time ago was this: if it ain't true of God, it ain't true of you. Because if we're one with God, and we are, because there's nowhere else to be. If Spirit is infinite, there's nothing outside of it. Guess where we are? Every single aspect, every detail of us is within that God, within that infinite presence. If we're one of God, then whatever we're saying is true of us, is true of God. Take a breath. I'm not supposed to use that as often. But still, take a breath anyways, because sometimes we forget this stuff. If it isn't true of God, it's not true of me. But we say this stuff. And we say it basically for 3 reasons. Number 1, habit. We're in the habit. We've just been conditioned like this to talk about this. Number 2 is what I call payoffs. And number 3 is core beliefs. Our self-talk reveals our core beliefs. So let's take those 3 and break them down. Number 1, habit. We've just been doing it. This is how most of us were conditioned to think about ourselves. We learned this as children. We learned this as very small children. We heard it from a parent, we heard it from a sibling, we heard it from classmates, we might have heard it from a teacher who wasn't having a real great day or wasn't a real enlightened teacher. And sometimes it comes from the way that we interpret experiences that we have had. You know, the way that we come to conclusions is we have an experience. Something happens, just something happens, okay? And we attach a meaning to it. We assign, what does that mean? Now remember that we assign, what does that mean? Take a breath. And then we look for evidence to support that we're right about what we assigned as the meaning, right? Because we like to be right. Our mind wants to be. You want your mind to be right most of the time. I mean, think of the world where you're wrong most of the time. You don't want to do that. Oh, what does that light mean? Red, green, yellow? I forgot. Well, I think green means go. No, maybe it means stop. Crunch. Okay? So you want to be right most of the time. It's a good thing. It's a healthy thing. But our mind wants to be right, so it looks for evidence to support that it's right. And in the process, ignores the evidence that might prove it wrong. And we start to focus and focus and focus. How does this look? 2 little kids in a grocery store. Same, brothers, sisters, siblings, whatever, maybe 2 different days or whatever like that. Mom leaves the child. The child's down in the store aisle playing for a moment, and mom says, I just need something from the next aisle over, runs over the next aisle over, and grabs something off the shelf. Child number 1 sits there and continues to entertain themselves. They're just fine and whatever. Child number 2 has a major abandonment breakdown, meltdown issue, right? Oh my God, Mommy, where's Mommy? And runs to the store screaming and crying. How many of you have watched a child do this at some point in time? Some of you may have been the child that did this at some point in time. Same incident, same event, different interpretation, different meaning added to the event. And then child number 2 walks through life with, I'm always abandoned by those I love. And then matches partners who like to do what? Abandon them, dump them, leave them. Okay? And so we do this by habit. We keep on creating and creating and recreating, and we find people to play with that will support us in our beliefs. I always get sick, and guess what? I always do. That's a theoretical lie. That's not me. I'm not taking that one on. Okay? And so we continue to manifest, and we continue to manifest, and we continue to manifest until we start to say, I need to change that habit. I need to think something different. Okay? So how do we build new habits? Number 1, we become aware of what our current habit is that we want to change. If you're not even aware of it, you can't do anything about it. And we tend to, when we're not aware of it, point our finger out there. It's them. It's that jerk who left me. It's those flu bugs that are always getting me. It's the wrong vaccine this year. It's the economy. It's the president or the Congress or whatever president or Congress we have. Doesn't matter. It's that out there, and we never look within. Okay? And so we start listening to, we have to stop that process and start realizing that when we're pointing our finger out there, Remember that wonderful little phrase, there's 3 pointing back at us? You know? Okay? And so we start to pay attention to what's the thought that's really going on within me. So we first become aware of it. We pay attention to our thinking. We catch ourselves. I think I told the story here before about when I was about in my mid-40s, there's a person in the office I was working in who was celebrating her 50th birthday. And she didn't look real good for 50. She looked a hard 50, if you know what I mean. And I heard a thought go through my mind that said, oh, that's what 50 looks like. And it was going to take that as a role model. I caught myself right away, of course, because I said, that's not what my 50 is going to look like. You know? But I caught myself, but we pay attention to our thoughts, we pay attention to our thoughts, we pay attention to our thoughts. And the process of what we do with meditation and spiritual practice is to pay attention to ever more subtle levels of thought and to drill down and to drill down and to drill down deeper. What is it that I'm really thinking? What's the thought that's really behind this? Something happens. What am I thinking? You know, we had a wonderful opportunity. We have a wonderful opportunity, actually, right present with us as a community. Many of you know that we had an event happen here about a week ago called, some people got back here and decided to use some wood that was around the property to build a bonfire in the back. If you've been back there, you see a big charge spot on the lawn. And we've also had the week before that, I think it was this window got broken out, the clear glass of it. So we've had some, what we might label vandalism going on in the community for the last couple weeks. And our first thought can be, point the finger out there, and how are we going to deal with it out here on the screen of the mind, of the movie out here? What do we need to do? We need to get cameras, we need to get security, we need to do all this outer stuff, and not ask the question, so where does that live within my consciousness? See, I played with that question about a week afterwards. It took me a few days of being really angry, and being in us versus them consciousness, and being in, you know, we're going to go get those guys and find them and punish them and do all that stuff consciousness, you know, and that's okay. But it's not really the ultimate way of doing it. We were just doing, Reverend Sue was just guiding a visioning over there, and I heard one of the people who shared that, you know, that was also their experience. But then they said, you know, in Taoism, the water is the most powerful element, and water will take the rock which can disturb it and lets it just sink to the bottom. And eventually the ripples go away, they settle back down, and the lake is lifted by the process. It's raised and expanded by the process of what it just absorbed. Where in our consciousness does this live? I realize that for me, and as the leader, the spiritual leader of this community, my consciousness gets reflected out here. It's really frustrating sometimes. Sometimes it's really exciting, and sometimes it's really frustrating. You know, my last church, when people wouldn't take classes, I'd sit there and go, why aren't they taking classes? And I'd sit there and go, okay, so where am I taking classes and doing education in my life? Oh, I'm not doing anything right now, so maybe I should, you know. And so I have to start living it myself and practicing it myself. And so that's how we do it. But we all do this within our same way. Where in my consciousness does this live? That leads us to the thoughts that we're thinking. And so I realized that what had happened was the week before that, I'd had an experience here that kind of, how do I say this, shifted me off of feeling really good. Okay? And so I was feeling hurt from that experience. And I was feeling kind of withdrawn, and like maybe I shouldn't be quite so playful and quite so humorous, and I couldn't quite express myself as fully as I wanted, and so I was pulling back. Bad idea. In mythology, which I love to study, when the king or the queen abdicates the throne, chaos always happens in the kingdom. Okay? And so I realized, oh, I wasn't in my full power. I wasn't here being the full me that I'm here to be. And my role is to step back in and say, you know, yes, once in a while I'm going to say something stupid and somebody's going to get hurt or offended by it. But most of the time I don't. And I'm still going to be the full power me. I'm not, you know, I will rise to a higher level in my own consciousness and do that work, but I'm also not going to turn off being me. That also means, guess who you have to be? Full power you. The invitation, yes. Yes. Full power you. And so we start standing here in this and we start to recognize that, okay, so yeah, our stuff got burned. But that's just our stuff. That isn't our church. You know who the church is or what the church is? It's us. It's our consciousness. Center for Spiritual Living Reading will exist in consciousness whether we are in this building or anywhere else, as long as we continue to claim that it exists. And so then we can take practical steps. I'm not saying we don't take practical steps, but I'm saying we do the work first in consciousness. We pay attention to our thinking. So that's the first step, is pay attention to the habitual thinking. What am I thinking? What is going on? Instead of looking at the stuff out there and trying to deal with it out there, when I made the reference to the screen, it's the reference to, we're running a movie onto a screen, and oftentimes we're trying to change the screen instead of changing the movie. Paying attention to our thinking, changing our thinking, is changing what's being run in front of the projector. Spirit's just sitting there as this white light coming out of the projector. It doesn't care what's thrown in front of it. The projector doesn't sit there and say, I'm not going to show that film. It offends my light. It just shines light. Bing! That's what it's doing. That's all Spirit's doing. It's shining light. It's just saying yes. We get to choose what we're running in front of it. Okay? And so we start to change that movie. We start to change that. And that takes the second step of changing our habits, which is practice. Ooh, dirty word, practice. We catch ourselves over and over again. Oh, I just realized I just spent the last 4 hours going down into a deep hole. Pull myself out of the hole, think something different. Oh, I just found myself 2 hours in that same hole. Pull myself out of the hole, think the new thought that I want. We start to create, what is the thought that I really want to create? What is the belief I really want to have? What is it that I really want to be saying to myself? Am I stupid and unable to learn? No. Am I, in the case of myself, what I was feeling was, am I unloved by this community? No. And if I am, does the universe still love me? Heck yeah, But I'm not unloved by this community. I know I'm not. Do I still have permission to be the full power me? Yes. Do I occasionally need to clean it up? Sure. But I still have the permission to be, in fact, it's more the full power me. The second thing we looked at, we talked about why we continue to do this, is what I call payoffs. We get payoffs for thinking negative thoughts. Do you know that? We get rewards. We get goodies. First of all, we get to fit in. If you're hanging around with a group of people who are all talking the same way, you don't want to be the big shining bright light, especially if you've had one of those childhoods where playing down and fitting in was a really good thing. Being a little invisible was the safe thing, which many of us had. Okay? You don't want to be, so you fit in to the group. There's that old story of the eagle that's being raised by the turkeys. Doesn't realize it's an eagle. Becomes a turkey, fits in with a turkey until one day an eagle, a real eagle, comes flying by that knows it's an eagle, comes flying by and says, basically, what the heck are you doing with those turkeys? You're an eagle. Look in the pond. See your reflection. You're not like them. So if we're hanging out with turkeys when we're really an eagle, first of all, change who you hang out with, by the way. Seriously. When I got into this teaching, I had to drop some friends out of my life because I could not handle the negativity that they continued to put out and expected from me. And I finally said, you know what? My life is more important than that. I love them. I wish they would step up, but they've made it clear they're not going to, at least at this point in time, and I'm moving on. Another payoff is we don't have to challenge ourselves. It's hard work to change your thinking. Have you noticed? It's actually, as a friend of mine used to say, it's easy to change your thinking. The hard work is keeping it changed. Okay? It's a challenge. It's hard work. And so one of the other things we do is if we change our thinking, the other thing is if we start to really become the powerful person that we know that we are, we're going to have to take on that thing that we know we're here to do. And then we might fail at it. And oh my God, what happens if we fail at what we're really here to do? And so we never get up to that. We never step into that. We hide back. We take a step back. We play it safe. If we're going to fail small over here. We're not going to take on what I really want to be, because I'm afraid of that. And so I hold back and I play small because of that. I don't want to challenge myself. I keep myself safe, which is one of the other big payoffs, safety. I keep myself safe. I fit in, I'm safe, I don't have to challenge myself, I don't have to do the hard work. And I get to keep things the same. We talked a couple of weeks ago from the book The Big Leap about the idea of the thermostat. We all have a thermostat of how much good we can handle in our lives. And so we keep ourselves within the range of comfort of that thermostat to where we feel comfortable. Because that's where we feel comfortable. If we're suddenly out there shining and being beautiful and big and bright and the full light that we are, to our small self, it'll feel uncomfortable. Michael Beckwith says the mind of mediocrity will always criticize and attack the mind of excellence. And that happens within our own mind. It's more safe and it's more okay to play mediocre in our culture. Do enough to get by. If you ever worked for an organization, I think of the city of Seattle, not the organization, the city of Seattle. I was working there one time, and I could not believe how slow those people moved in that office. I was there on a temporary assignment. I was given a project that I was given 2 weeks. They estimated it would take me 2 weeks to do. It took me 2 days to do it. And they were like, God, how did you do that? I went, well, I just going to work at a normal pace. You guys are... Let's hold it back. Let's not do too much. Let's take lots of breaks. Let's take long lunches. So we keep ourselves comfortable. And that's our payoffs. So the second reason that we keep ourselves in there is payoffs. What do I get from it? And it's important to know, what do you get from it? And to find another way to get that. You can get the same payoff in a different way. So you can fit in, you just find a new group to fit in with. That's why we come here in community. That's why we play with each other. It's because we have a commitment to think higher thoughts and to think in a more positive and more powerful way, to start to accept ourselves, to say, yeah, go for it, rather than who do you think you are. Okay? And so we play in this community. We start to have that payoff. We start to say, yes, I really am going to, what, if I fail at doing what it is that I love, I'll pick myself up and try it again in a different way. Everybody who's ever been successful has first failed, including you. The first time you tried walking, how'd you do? Plop, right? First time you tried riding a bike, you probably went splat. Even when I was a really highly skilled bike rider, occasionally I went splat. So I was pushing the edges of what I could do. I like to watch, Formula One racing once in a while, and every once in a while, off they go into the gravel, especially in the practice laps when they're trying to figure out how fast they can go in the car on the track. Off into the gravel. They fail. They make mistakes. Sometimes they fail expensively, like when they go thud against something solid. So we can get all of our needs met, all of our payoffs met, but we find a different way to do it, other than playing small. Then the third thing we talked about is our core beliefs. And oftentimes our self-talk is centered around and is an expression of our real deep core beliefs. We talked about this yesterday in Andrew's workshop. And deep core beliefs are things like, I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable, I'm a burden, there's something wrong with me, I'm unworthy. That really core out of which the principles out of which you're operating about, in your life. Again, let's all just take a nice little collective to dissipate that all out of their breath. Let it go, shake it out if you need to, if that hurt. So we have these core beliefs. And the thing with core beliefs is, they seem to us like that's just how the world operates. Doesn't everybody feel this way? There's a wonderful cartoon that I saw recently that shows a street scene with a whole group of people on the street, and everybody has this little thought bubble coming out going into the same phrase. And the phrase is, these people all have it so much together, so much more together than I do. Everybody in the street is looking at everybody else in the street thinking they all have it more together than I do. And it seems so normal for us to think that. We're going to talk in the second service. I'm doing a completely different talk in the second service because I came at this in two different ways. And we're going to talk about systems of thinking, and that's one of the things we're going to explore, is what's our system of thinking. So our core belief leaves evidence all over our lives. But oftentimes it's so subtle and it's so normal that we don't think about it. We don't see it. We can't see it. It's just the way we view things. And that's why you want to get a practitioner, a coach, somebody who can walk you through it, somebody who's not working off of your set of stories and your set of belief systems, who can say, hey, you know what, there's more over here than you think there is. You're working on black and white TV is the only way there is. And somebody finally says, you know, color is available. Okay? So that's why to get to our core beliefs and to get through our core beliefs oftentimes takes somebody else helping us, somebody else guiding us. That's why I encourage us to work both as a community and especially with trained practitioners, because that's what we train them in. We train them in getting rid of core beliefs that don't support us. They come with jackhammers. Spiritual jackhammers, of course. Emily Cady, who was a New Thought writer early in the last century, said, every person believes themselves to be in bondage to the flesh and the things of the flesh. All suffering is a result of this belief. We all believe ourselves to be in bondage to our bodies, to our stuff, to everything outside and external, and that is the cause of all of our sufferings, because we believe we're in bondage to that. Ernest Holmes says the body is an effect, not a cause. And yet a lot of us walk around and say, well, my body says this, my body's doing that, and it's like, yeah, because your consciousness, your thinking is doing that, and it is manifesting in, through, and as your body. It is manifesting in, through, and as your finances. It is manifesting in, through, and as your relationships, your career, every single aspect of the life. But it's all effect. It's all effect. We're looking at the screen of the movie, and ours is to change the movie. And that's what we're doing with, is it true? We start asking ourselves the question, what is the highest truth that I know, and is it really true, and am I living it? So how do we change this? Number one, we pay attention. There's an old story in Zen of a Zen master and a student walking along. The student says, so what is the secret to enlightenment? And the Zen master says, attention. The student says, yes, attention is the first step, but what's the next step? And the Zen master says, the first step is attention. The second step is attention. The 100th step is attention. And the student finally looks at him and says, well, then what do you mean by attention? And the Zen master says, by attention I mean attention. Yesterday, Andrew Oser, who's a former tennis coach, reminded us of the old thing, you know, in playing tennis or you know, baseball or any of those where you've got to, you know, hit something with an object. You want to keep your eye on the ball. We're trained to keep our eye on. We're told to keep your eye on the ball. What he says he teaches people to do is, because our minds can process so much, is he teaches people to keep your eye on the seams of the ball as it is coming to you. And I remember this from baseball. I was trained as a hitter. Keep your eye on the stitching of the ball as it's coming to you, because then your focus is really on the ball. So we keep our eye on the subtle thoughts that we're thinking. We keep our eye on the gaps in our consciousness and what we're saying in those gaps. We're keeping our attention on that. So we listen to our thinking. We listen to how others talk to us, because we've taught them how to talk to us. We listen to that. So the first step is pay attention. The second one, ask, is this true of God? If you find yourself saying something to you, or somebody else says something to you that is not true of God, guess what? Ain't true of you. And if it's not, let it float away. Let go of it. Do not carry it. Don't take it with you anymore. And then finally, the third thing, create a new higher thought belief. We build our consciousness. We can rebuild our consciousness at any point in time that we want to. Yes, we got some programming in early childhood. Guess what? You can change that today. Isn't that the good news?
Yes.
Thank you, God. Yes, that's the great news. We can change our consciousness. And by changing our consciousness, we can change everything that we experience in our lives. So we get support. We start changing friends if we need to. We start speaking truth to ourselves. We start hanging out with people who are thinking higher thoughts. Okay? We build a new consciousness. We build it consciously. Consciously building consciousness. I want to close with a quote from Emily Cady also. This is out of her book, Lessons in Truth. Great book. Man who is at first living in the selfish animal part of himself will grow up through various stages and by various processes to the divine or spiritual understanding wherein he knows that he is one with the Father and wherein he is free from all suffering. Now understand, she's writing this about 100 years ago, so it's a lot of he's and God is the Father. Don't get locked up into that stuff. It's the infinite presence and it's all of us. And wherein we are free from all suffering because he has conscious dominion over all things. Somewhere on this journey, the human consciousness or intellect comes to a place where it gladly bows to its spiritual self and confesses that this spiritual self, its Christ consciousness, is highest and Lord. Here and forevermore after, not with sense of bondage, but with joyful freedom, the heart cries out, Jehovah reigns. God reigns. The infinite presence reigns. It's all there is. Everyone must sooner or later come to this point of experience. That's the good news. This isn't for some. This isn't for the chosen few. All of us are going to get here. Ernest Holmes says the same thing in our What We Believe statement. All of us are going to get here. The question is, how soon do you want to get there? I like now is kind of a good answer for that one. So I invite you this week to stop if your negative thinking. If you notice you're playing dumb, dumbing down, like that, be the brilliance of who you are. Be the light of who you are and the power and the grace of who you are. That's your assignment this week. Go forth and shine. Thank you. I'll invite our ushers.